Imagine you're on a tropical island, lying by a pool, and you're just about to make the biggest decision you've had to make all day. Will you have a swim or order a drink? And as you're contemplating this difficult conundrum, your mobile phone goes off. And you pick up the mobile and you have a look, and there's a message there from your bank. $30,000 has just been deposited in your bank from your business. And you sit back and think about that. You've been away for a month and the money's still coming in. How good is that? And shortly after, your phone goes off again. You have a look at that, and there's a message from your office. And you click on it, and it's a one-page summary of everything that's happened since you've been away. Starts off with the highlights of what's happened during with your business while you've been away. It has a quick summary of the financials, the sales, the profits. It summarises the new opportunities. It also has a list of some of the issues that have arisen while you were away. And also what actions are being taken to address those issues. As you look at this, you think, maybe I should give my office a call. And you think, nah, they're doing perfectly fine without me. At that point, you track the eye of the pool waiter, order a drink, and then dive into the pool. Is that what it's like when you go on holidays? How many of you took 4 weeks off in the last 12 months? For those of you who didn't put up your hands, how many weeks off did your staff have? Does that sound fair? And I did a survey for another franchise group. Didn't have the opportunity to do it with Flooring Extra, and asking them how many hours do they work in a week. And you can see in this particular franchise it's less than 20% work less than 35 hours a week. Who here works less than 35 hours a week? No one. So if you're working 50 hours or more in your business, you don't have a business. You have a job with overheads. And your boss is a lunatic. And you'll never have a business that runs without you if you're working 50, 60 hours a week. So why can't you leave your business? What's stopping you from leaving your business and having it run without you? Now, I know it's not all beer and Skittles in the flooring business. You've got demanding customers. You're firefighting issues with your staff. And then you've got all the paperwork. And then you need the skills of an Olympic gymnast just to keep the bottom line in the black. So let's have a look at, so what I'm going to talk about today, first of all, 3 things that stops your business running without you. Then I'm going to give you 5 steps that you need to take to make your business run without you. The first thing you need to have in your business is a clear vision, where you're going with your business. What your business is going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But without a clear vision, and you see business owners without a clear vision, they find decision making hard, which opportunities to take, and just as importantly, which opportunities to avoid. And in fact, what they do is they grab the first opportunity comes along. It doesn't give them instantaneous results. They drop it and they grab the next one hoping it will work. And this just becomes a cycle. And without a clear vision, you can't have a strategy for your business. Now, strategy is the lever that helps you use limited resources to get from where you are today to where you want to be in 5 years' time. And it's a bit like, so you're able to harness your scarce resources. And it's a bit like comparing a person who's learning to swim and an Olympic swimmer. Now, a person who's learning to swim is expending a huge amount of energy and possibly going nowhere except down for the third time. An Olympic swimmer, on the other hand, is barely making a ripple in the pool, and all their energies is focused on reaching the finishing line. The person learning to swim may, in fact, expend far more energy than the Olympic swimmer, because after all, they're trying to save their life, whereas the Olympic swimmer, all they're trying to do is win a medal. So if you're expending a lot of energy in your business and going nowhere, it's quite possible that you just don't have a strategy to drive your business. So if you're working all those hours, you might be wondering, well, if I reduce those hours, maybe I won't make as much money. How would you like to know how to make more money by working less? Who knows someone who would like to make more money while working less? Could you keep your hands up if you know them intimately? So when you have that strategy, you can make sure you get your biggest bang for your buck, which is really important if you don't have a lot of bucks. But it's not enough to have a vision for your business. Your vision might be the best flooring business in your suburb. But if that's all you have, if you don't have a plan, if it's just a vision, it's just a dream. And how often have they come true for you lately? So when you have a plan, you are able to determine what your goals are for your business. You're able to set goals. And your goals are your opportunity finders. And a lot of people think they don't get the right opportunities. Thomas Edison once said, most people don't recognise opportunities because they turn up in overalls and look like hard work. You have an opportunity today with this conference. You'll get lots of ideas, but nothing will happen unless you do the hard work after the conference. Nothing will change. What do we all have in common with Richard Branson and Bill Gates? Can anyone tell me what we all have in common with Richard Branson and Bill Gates? That's obvious, but something else? Anyone else? Human? 24 hours. 24 hours. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. It's what we do with the 24 hours that makes the difference in the outcomes we have. Bill Gates and Richard Branson know their goals and they're focused 100% on their goals during the day and make maximum use of their time and dedicated to delivering on their goals. But the problem for most business owners is they are micromanagers. And what they have to learn is what brain surgeons know. So what happens with business owners, they give work to someone else, they mess it up, so they spend twice as long fixing it up, and if they do give work to this person again, they watch over them like a hawk, they micromanage. But that's not what brain surgeons do. Brain surgeons don't run the operating theatre. The theatre nurse does that. Brain surgeons don't open up and close. They have junior surgeons to do that. And brain surgeons certainly don't mop up the blood from the floor. All the brain surgeons do is the brain surgery, plus a little bit of marketing beforehand, client needs, and a little bit of marketing afterwards, client satisfaction. How can they do this? Systems. Hospitals have very, very sophisticated systems. So the theatre nurse doesn't know how to operate on a brain, but they do know how to prepare the operating theatre and how to prepare the patient. So everyone in the operating theatre has their own role, while the high-priced brain surgeon, the most expensive person in the room, does what only they can do, which is the brain surgery. What this is about is putting a dollar value on your time. You have to value your time. And it's all about not spending dollar time on penny jobs. And an example of that might be a lot of business owners do their own books. Why? Well, they think they're saving some money doing their own books. But it's something they're probably not very good at because it's not their brain surgery. And at the end of the year, they give their books to the high-priced accountant who spends extra time fixing up all their mistakes. So you need to decide whether you want to be the flooring expert who has the best set of MYOB accounts in town, or the one who spends most time with their customers. And if you're spending time on your MYOBs, on your QuickBooks, who's spending time with your customers? So we need to put a dollar value on our time. How do you do that? Well, one way of doing it is to think about how much you'd like to make from your business and divide that by the number of hours you'd like to work in your business over the course of the year, the number of weeks a year, a number of hours per week. And then you'll come up with a dollar per hour figure that values your time. And so what I'd like you to do now is just think what might be the dollar value of your time. What might it worthwhile, might it be? Is it $100 an hour, $150 an hour, $200 an hour? I don't know. Pick a number. Pick a number that you think should be the dollar value of your time. Now I'd like you to think of 3 things you could give others to do that you're currently doing, people who you would only have to pay somewhat less for. So a bookkeeper, if you say my time is worth $100 an hour, a bookkeeper only costs you $50 an hour or even less. So what I'd like you to do, just take a minute or two and speak with your neighbour at the table and come up with 3 things you could stop doing now once you've valued your time and could give work to others. So can you think of 3 things? Coming up with anything? You coming up with any ideas? Coming up with some ideas?
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Coming up with some ideas?
No, not really. I don't even know what my word is.
We'll just start with $100 an hour. I'm sure you're worth at least that. Coming up with some ideas?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Good.
Writing invoices.
Mm-hmm.
Writing invoices.
Good one. Coming up with some ideas? You got any ideas?
No. I was going to. Well, all I said was I think I've got a pretty cushy job, so I can pass anything on.
Oh, well, you're far in advance of many people, I think.
I was going to say I think the wife would probably pass a few things off.
Yeah?
But,
Oh, you put a dollar value on her time. You getting some ideas? Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, can we have some examples? Can we have some examples of things that you could stop doing and give to someone else to do? Anyone give me an example? Cleaning? Yeah. Jumping up the blob up the floor. What else?
You know, the maintenance of the garden.
Maintenance of the gardens and lawns? Yeah, absolutely. That's what Jim's mowing's for.
Yeah, I know. I've discovered it.
What else?
Running errands.
Running errands, yeah. Yeah, that's what couriers are for. Another example?
Sorry, I was doing a calculation. I missed the question, but I guess you're asking what I could do.
What you could drop?
Yeah. I could get an part-time office girl.
Yes, there you go. So there's just some ideas that you could utilise which automatically are going to give you some more time. You've just created more time for yourself. Clearly, time is what is stopping us more than anything else in being effective in our business. And the thing about time is once you spend it, you'll never get it back. So let's dig deeper into this time. This is the first step that we need to take to make our business run without us. We need to create more time for ourselves. Now, I'm sure most of you will not recognise this gentleman. I knew his name, but didn't know what he looked like until I did a Wikipedia search. The font of all knowledge nowadays. This is Northcote Parkinson of Parkinson's Law fame. Who's heard of Parkinson's Law? Not too many. You may actually recognise the law. The law is work expands to fill the time available. You've heard about that? Yeah. So this is the guy who actually came up with that law. He had a lot of ancillary laws as well, but that was the one he's most known about. How did he come up with this? Well, he was doing a study of the British Colonial Office. And what he found is over the years, as the number of colonies that Britain had reduced, the size of the Colonial Office expanded. And the office was never larger, even in the times when Britannia ruled the waves and the sun never set on the British Empire, but the British Colonial Office was never larger than the point when it lost its last colony. And guess what happened to all those people? Do you think they said, thanks for all your work, fellas, go off and find another job? Of course that didn't happen. They all got absorbed into the Foreign Office, where they found more work for them to do. Work expands to fill the time available. And if you doubt this is true, think of the last time you had a crisis in your business. A big client says, this has to be done by today. Were you able to meet their demands? Were you able to put off things you didn't need to do today? Did you stop doing some things and making sure all hands were focused on delivering what this client needed? This is about prioritising what you do, focusing on your goals, your very, very clear goals. When you have a clear goal with a clear deadline, it's very easy to work out what's important and what's not important, and stop doing the not important stuff and focusing on the things that really matter. Because otherwise, work just expands to fill the time available. And that will happen if you don't have clear goals. Now, in business, there are 3 hats you have to wear. Now, I want to acknowledge now Michael Gerber. I don't know how many of you have heard of him. He's a pioneering thought leader on small business, and a lot of these ideas come from him, and he's written extensively about this. A very good person to look up and read. But in business, you have to wear 3 hats. Now, most of you, what I understand, when you bought your franchise, prior to that, you were installers. You had a great skill being able to install floors well. You were very, very knowledgeable on the subject, and it's probably something you enjoyed doing. And so this is so common with what happens when most people start a business. They have some mechanical skill that they're good at, they're really good at, and they build a business around that skill set. But it's not enough to be a mechanic in your business. You also have to be the manager. Now, the manager always wants things quicker, cheaper, better, and really gets up the nose of the mechanic, because after all, the mechanic is a perfectionist. But that's not enough also. You also need to be the entrepreneur. Now, the entrepreneur is not really too fussed about what happens day to day, because there's a manager to take care of that for them. What they're focused on is where the business is today and where they want it to be in 5 years' time, and what they should be doing today to achieve their 5-year goals. So you need to recognise where you are spending time in your business, as the mechanic, as the manager, or the entrepreneur. Now, I'd like to stop here again, and I get you to speak with your buddy on the table and discuss how much time you spend in each sector: mechanic, manager, or entrepreneur. So how much time are you spending today in each sector of your business? Where do you spend your time?
Where do I spend most of my time?
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial, I reckon.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say,
Yeah.
I'm going to train her to do it.
And where do you spend your time?
I'm the mechanic and the entrepreneur, but I'm not even the boss, so I'm doing pretty well.
Who's the boss?
It's going to business, soon to be conquered.
The boss is running the business.
Yeah.
I think like a lot of it, the talking mechanic in this business is either when you're in the sales or you're in the installation. It's one of those two, they're the operational part. So some people, like I can't just get involved with sales because that was how I came into the business, and you always get involved. You can't help yourself. You talked to me in the bar last night, I've got 2 trips planned, I'm going to go here.
So where do you spend most of your time?
Mechanic. Which I think that'll be across the board. You already knew that.
Where do you spend most of your time? Where do you spend most of your time?
Always work. Always.
Mechanic?
Pretty much.
And where do you spend most of your time?
It changes daily.
Doing all three.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. All right. So, can you put up your hands, please, if you spend most of your time as the mechanic? Can you put up your hands, please, if you spend most of the time? Put up your hands if you spend most of the time as the manager. Put up your hands, please, if you spend most of your time as the entrepreneur. It seems to be a lot of people who don't know where they spend their time. But for those of you who didn't put up their hand as the entrepreneur, is that a light bulb moment for you? This is the brain surgery of your business. This is the area of your business where you should be spending most of your time, and it's the opportunity to add most of the value. If you're there spending time on the operations, focusing on the installation or the sales, you don't have the time to do the other things we're going to talk about today. So let's drill down a little bit deeper in understanding our time. This is the way I like to think of it. I've got two axes here. On the horizontal axis, we have importance. On the vertical axis, we have urgency. And we move from not important, not urgent, to urgent but not important, over to urgent and important but not urgent. So let's have a look at each of these areas in turn. Let's start off with not important, not urgent. And these are the things that if you did them right now, or did them this afternoon, or even tomorrow, or the day after, it wouldn't make a difference in your business. But things you do spend time on anyway. So an example of this is most emails you get, even most phone calls. What other things do you see yourself doing in the not important, not urgent quadrant? Any suggestions?
Emails.
Emails, yes. What else? Sorry? Training? Cleaning, yes, cleaning, yeah. What else?
Straightening files on a desk.
There's obviously a whole bunch of things we all do that keep us busy. In fact, if you examine your time, and I would strongly recommend after today, you actually keep a time log to see where you're spending your time. And note every hour of the day where you've spent your time. So in this area, we tend to spend time doing things in this area because we feel like we've achieved something. The files are straightened. The office is clean. And I've answered all my emails. I've really achieved something today, haven't I? But at the end of the day, the business is no different than it was at the beginning of the day. I like to call this quadrant procrastinate now. These are things which are easy to do. We get a sense of achievement by doing them, but it's not the hard stuff in the business. So we tend to spend time here rather than focusing on the more difficult things in our business. So let's look at the next quadrant. Urgent but not important. And some of the things there, so these are things you have to fix today. So the computer's not working. You can't send out invoices. You can't do transactions that you need to be doing. So of course you have to get it fixed today. Or there could be supplier problems. The wrong flooring was sent through from the supplier, or it wasn't delivered in time. And you're chasing things all the time. What other things? None of these things on their own are going to damage your business. They're annoying, they have to be fixed, and they have to be addressed now. And this is firefighting. What other examples of firefighting do you see in your business?
Refueling your car.
Okay. It's empty, it's on empty, so you can't drive it anywhere without it. What else? Any other firefighting going on? Sorry? Sick days, yeah. Yeah, so staff not turning up?
Installation issues.
Yep. Yeah, maybe the measuring wasn't done properly. Remeasuring. Yeah. Yeah, remeasuring. Yes? Sorry, I can't hear.
Receiving deliveries.
Receiving deliveries. The truck's here, you have to do it now.
Patronising unannounced sales reps.
Well, that's right. Unannounced sales reps. They're using your time. They're choosing a time of their convenience. It's convenient for them. So there's a whole range of things that you're doing. And in most of these examples, you could stop these fires by having some sort of protocol or system. So for example, if computer problems, you had good backups and a good computer maintenance, you wouldn't have the computer problems. If you had an effective ordering system, you're not going to have order problems. Every one of these examples, you can put in place a system which would stop these fires continually alighting. And I like to call this Groundhog Day, because if we don't fix these problems, we're doomed to relive this day over and over again. So we need to stop the fires from starting in the first place by having systems in place to fix the problems so you don't have the computer problems. That the orders coming through don't have mistakes in them. That when the measure up is done, it's done right the first time. Next we come to important and urgent. And I hope you really don't spend any time here, because these could be devastating things. So, for example, it could be a staff injury or even a fire that affects your store. These sorts of things can be devastating to your business, and can really hurt the business. And some people don't survive from such an event. And I like to call these lightning strikes. And hopefully they haven't happened to you, but I'm sure when you look around, maybe not in Flooring Extra, but maybe other businesses you've been associated with, you've seen these lightning strikes and seen how difficult it is for these businesses to survive after a lightning strike. And I remember hearing Claude Lombard, owner of Lombard's The Paper People, speak about a fire they had here in Melbourne at their warehouse 5 years ago. And anyone in Melbourne here probably remembers it. In fact, the smoke was seen pretty much everywhere in Melbourne. And you can imagine a paper warehouse going up in smoke. There's not much the fire brigade could do. And it did, of course, get burned to the ground. There was nothing left. But what Claude Lombard said is he heard about the fire at 3 o'clock in the morning. And when he saw how bad it was, he put in place their contingency plans. And they had the business up and running by 9 o'clock that morning because of all the plans and things, strategies they put in place. They had planned what would happen if we had a major catastrophe like this. How would we restart the business? So they had all their plans in place. And he said the only thing he regretted, and he learned from this experience, was he didn't have enough insurance. So what we need to do is make sure we have mitigation strategies for these sorts of events. So if something as unfortunate as this happens, you have a way of reacting to it and making sure it doesn't damage your business. And finally, we come to the important, not urgent quadrant of the business. And this is the most important part of the business. This is where the brain surgery is. So these are the things that are business improvement strategies that you'd be working on. And if you didn't do them today, nothing much would happen. If you didn't do them next week, nothing would happen. Even if you didn't do them next month, it'd still be okay. But if you kept not doing them for 3, 6, 12 months, this will impact on your business. And you will be forever trapped within Groundhog Day. So this is the area where you decide what things are not important and not urgent and how you can delegate them to others or stop doing them altogether or outsource them. This is the area where you actually spend time working out how to stop the fires from starting. This is the area where you spend time putting together your mitigation strategies. And this is the area where you should be, as the owners of the business, be spending most of your time. And if you're not spending time here, you'll never have a business that runs without you. So we've talked about how you should be spending your time and how you can create more time for yourself and the sort of things you should be focusing on. Now I'd like to talk about how you operate your business. Can anyone tell me the name of a multi-million-dollar business run by high school kids? And don't tell me, as someone did last time I presented this and said, the Australian government. A multi-million-dollar business run by high school kids. Can anyone? McDonald's. Yes, McDonald's. Exactly right. The kid with the 19-year-old kid with a manager on the lapel is not the owner. You never see the owner. The owner has 3, 4 or more of these franchises, and the business is able to run without the owner being there every day. And how can they do this? It's because of the systems in the business. And in fact, McDonald's is often the model for other franchise networks, that they look at how successful McDonald's is and what they do well and how they've used systems to make sure that things are done the right way in every one of their franchises. Now, the Big Mac. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate a Big Mac from 1, barely edible, up to 10, burger heaven? 1. Oh, that's a bit harsh. Anyone, any advances on 1? Yes?
Look like that, 3.
3.
10 after a big night.
10 after a big night. I mean, it's that sense of fulfilment as you open the pack no. So we had a range of answers there. My answer would be 6. Just acceptable. Why 6? For those of you who answered 1 or 2. Well, McDonald's is the most successful restaurant in the whole world. So they must be doing something right. And here's the thing. If you walked into any McDonald's here in Melbourne, it would be a 6. If you walked into McDonald's in Sydney, it would be a 6. If you walked into McDonald's in Perth, it would be 6. Love it or hate it, McDonald's never fails to meet your expectations. The message here is the consistency of the product and the service you get. They have designed a business around a level of service. Now, you might choose not to go to McDonald's, but many people do. They know what to expect, and McDonald's, because of the systems, are able to deliver that burger at a very, very affordable price. Now, it might surprise you to know there are no 5-star chefs at your local McDonald's. Did you know that? Because of the systems they have there, all the brain surgery for their business, which is creating a burger, and they do have chefs at their hamburger university, they do have chefs there, but they're building a product to a price. And building a product which can be assembled by minimum wage labour. So they've taken the brain surgery and sliced and diced it. So people who have none of those skills can assemble the product for them. That's their business model. And it's a very successful model. And they're able to do that because of the strength of the systems. They have systems for everything in McDonald's. In fact, they have a saying in McDonald's, if you can lean, you can clean. So that every moment of the day is occupied by the staff in McDonald's.
Could you take that up? It's making me feel hungry.
Your wish is my command. But what McDonald's have done is analyse their workflow process, which is what you need to do as well. And the workflow process is from the time you get the phone call to the time you bank the cheque. So what they're doing is splitting apart the brain surgery. So it's doesn't look like a black box anymore that only you know what's inside. So in this very simple example, we've got broken up into marketing, operations, administration. So we've got promotion of inquiries, getting the inquiries, handling the inquiries, and converting them to sales. Then we've got produce the order and deliver the order, and then you've got the administration for managing the order and receiving payment. And of course, each one of these boxes can be expanded. This is of course a very simple view of it. So for produce an order, so you receive the order from the sales team. Then you might check to see whether you have the materials in stock. And if it's getting close to a reorder level, you might reorder more of that product. And then you put together a plan for installation. The installation occurs. There is some inspection to make sure customer satisfaction. So what we can do is for each one of those steps, we can expand what's in those steps. And underlying each of those steps are systems. So what are we talking about in systems here? So there could be procedures, they could be checklists, they could be templates, could even be scripts for the sales team. Now I'd like to give you an example of a procedure. Now this requires, like putting together a Big Mac, requires no special skills. So I'm going to train you this morning in this procedure. First of all, I would like you to think of a number between 1 and 10. Think of a number between 1 and 10. Now, having thought of that number, I would like you to multiply that number by 9. Multiply that number by 9. Now, if you've ended up with a 2-digit number, I would like you to add the digits together. So if you ended up with, say, 15, add 1 and 5 and you get 6. So everyone now should have a single-digit number. Okay? What I'd like you to do now is subtract 5 from that number. 1 and 5 was 6, and take off 5, I'm left with 1. Now I'd like you to associate that number with the letter of the alphabet. So 1 would be A, 2 would be B, and so on. Okay? So you should now have a letter of the alphabet. Now I'd like you to think of a name of a country that starts with that letter. So in my case, I thought of A, so I could have, country I might have think about is Algeria. So having thought of a country, I would like you to look at the second letter of that country name and think of an animal. Now in my case, Algeria, L, lion. I'll think of a lion. Now having got the animal, I would like you to think of the colour of that animal. Now I thought of a lion, that's sort of a yellow colour. Anyone else have yellow? No. What about blue? Does anyone have blue? No. What I want you to do is concentrate really, really hard. Focus on the animal and focus on the colour. And I'll see if I can read your minds. Put up your hands if the colour was grey. Keep your hands up if you think I read your minds. No, it's a trick. It's a trick. But what I did was I showed you, and it doesn't work every time. It works maybe 9 out of 10 times. There are other ways of getting other answers. But for an 8-step system, which I trained you to do in 2 minutes, giving a result like that, giving the outcome that I wanted. But have a look at what I did. I had a step-by-step system that's actually written down so I don't forget the steps. And I explained each step all the way through. I gave examples all the way through. If I missed a step, we wouldn't have got the right outcome. If I got the steps in the wrong order, I wouldn't have got the wrong outcome. So this is what we need to do when we're putting together a procedure for others to follow, that we have all the steps fully laid out with examples at each step. So that way you can take something which is brain surgery to something that can be done by anyone with no specialist knowledge, without the knowledge that you have. The brain surgery is turning it into something that others can do. So for those who didn't think of get the right colour, that was the animal. So let's talk about the system. So what we've done now is we're going to just take one part of the workflow process and look at the systems that might support it. So you get an initial inquiry. If it's some over the phone, perhaps you have a phone script. You might have an inquiry log so you can track where the inquiries come from and also gather as much information about the inquirer as you possibly can. So when they come into the store, you can certainly greet them and recognise the fact that they've called to you before. You might have an appointment form for the measure-up. You might have a prospect information template so you can gather as much information as you possibly can on the customer. You might have an appointment script, so the person who does the measure-up actually has a script to use with the customer. You might even provide them a little bit of sales training, because it's when they're in their home, that's the best time to make the sale, rather than after they've got a second quote. You might have product information sheets. You might have a quote template and a quoting procedure. And you might have an ancillary services checklist. Do you want fries with that? So having your operations procedures written down, which is what you need to do, have them written down and become training manuals for your staff. Once you have them in place, that's not enough. It's necessary, but it's not enough. What you also need to do is to have a way of making sure there is compliance with those systems, that people are actually following them. So how you manage this process with your staff is also important to making sure that when you're away, that the mice don't play. Does anyone here recognise these fine, upstanding young gentlemen? Sorry, what was that? You're too young, you wouldn't know. Some of the older people in the room. Anyone know who? Sorry? No. No. Van Halen. Van Halen. And that shy, retiring gentleman, second from the right, does anyone know who he is? David Lee Roth, yes. These were hard-living rock and rollers. They lived the dream, sex, drugs and rock and roll. And that's not orange juice they're drinking. They had quite a reputation, and they, especially for giving their promoters a very, very hard time. And they would trash the hotel rooms, they would trash their dressing rooms. But possibly the weirdest thing that they were known for was they insisted on a bowl of M&Ms in their dressing room. And that's not all. They insisted that not only there be a bowl of M&Ms in their dressing room, but all the brown ones should be taken out. So David Lee Roth would come in early and check the dressing room, and if the M&Ms weren't there, or if there were still some brown ones in it, he would throw a tantrum and trash the joint. But there was a method in his madness. There was a method in his madness. You need to understand that the Van Halen show was a highly choreographed light and sound spectacular. The equipment they had was heavy and, of course, high voltage. There was lots of safety issues there, and Van Halen were very, very safety conscious. There are a lot of injuries in the music industry. A lot of people get hurt. Some even die. It's not uncommon. But they were very safety conscious. So the contract with their promoter had detailed technical specifications of their requirements for the setup of the stage for their performance. So what David Lee Roth did was then insert the clause about the M&Ms in the middle of the contract. And he had a rider on there and said if the M&Ms weren't there to their specifications, they could cancel the concert and the promoter would still have to pay them. So what David Lee Roth would do, he would come in a new venue 2 hours early and he would check the M&Ms situations in the dressing room. And if they weren't there according to spec, he would have a tantrum to get the promoter's attention, and then he would insist on a line-by-line review of the technical specifications in the contract. Because he knew if the M&Ms weren't there, there was probably something else in the contract that they didn't read and didn't comply with. So for him, the M&Ms were the canary in the coal mine. It was the red flag that they hadn't done everything, and that he should be wary and check what it is that they had fully complied. So the message here is you don't have to be a micromanager, but doing spot checks, random audits of work keeps people on their toes and making sure that they comply with the systems that you have in place. But even that is not enough. You need to have a management reporting system. So this is a business management system. And it starts off at the top with your business mission and goals, the vision, where we started off today. You need to have a clear vision because it drives everything else. Then you move into your key business areas. So let's have a look at a bit more detail. So in any organisation, these are roughly the key business areas. So you've got the sales department which manages the sale, you've got the administration department that delivers the sale, and you've got the operations department that does the installation. So these are the key business areas, and in each area they might be handling 2 or 3 different other areas. And typically in a business you'll find there are maybe 8, 10 key business areas. So for each of these key business areas, you can map the workflow process into those key business areas. So you know what the tasks required, whose responsibility each of those key business areas are. And of course, underneath them are the systems. So what we have now is your key business areas, and under each you have systems associated with those areas, and you have a standard for each of those areas, what a good job looks like. So people know what a good job looks like. So you assign those key business areas to the roles in your business, and then you assign people to those roles. In a small business, quite often people have more than one role. It's quite common. But what we have now is an ability to do performance measurement of the staff within our business. We've said what the standards are, what the tasks are they're responsible for, and we can measure their performance against those tasks. So there's a lot of information in this system, but we have to extract it in some way that's usable for us. In a jumbo jet, there are over 6 million parts. Do you think you have as many parts in your business? And the pilots manage the plane with 6 gauges. So if the guy in seat 57D can't fully recline his seat, do you think the pilot comes out of the cabin door, rushes down the aisle with a screwdriver? If this was your plane, would you be rushing down the aisle with a screwdriver? The pilot probably doesn't even know this has happened. The cabin crew manages this. The pilots trust the cabin crew to let them know if there's something they should know about, maybe a fire in the cabin or something like that. And the pilots are focused on the 6 gauges in front of them. Things like airspeed, altitude, attitude. So if the airspeed were to drop, they could drill down in the gauge and find out which of the many reasons might be causing the airspeed to drop. So they're focused on what's important for the plane, making sure it arrives at its final destination safely, which is your job, focusing on getting the plane to its final destination safely. So what gauges should you have in your business? What would you be using to report on your airspeed and your altitude? So let's have a look at some of the gauges that you might use in your business. Now, simplifying things a little bit, there are really 3 key areas in most businesses. You've got the financial, marketing and operations. So let's have a look at what some of the things that you would like to see in each of those areas. So in financials, we've got monthly sales, net profit, creditors. What else can you think of? What I'd like you to do is just spend a couple of minutes with your table discussing what other financial measures would be important in your business. So what other measures would you be using?
Matching your monthly sales to projections, debtors and creditors, and additional budgets. Sorry? Expenses, yeah. Business expenses.
Okay.
To try and drive your, have your sales and you have your net profit. If you need to be going up, and your overheads are locked in, and the GP goes up.
Okay.
Creditors being what you owe, okay, debtors, good one, and what's the measure on that? What are the other measures?
What other things would you want to measure?
We went for debtors. Wages, superannuation work.
Yep. Yep. So what sort of measures are you contemplating?
For debtors,
Yep.
about all I can think of that.
Okay. Okay. Can you give me some examples? Can you? Okay. Okay. All right. Now, can you give me some examples, please? Can you give me some examples, please, of other things you could be measuring for financials? Some other examples of financials you will want to measure, and you'll have the gauges in this. Sorry? Debtors, yes.
Daily operating costs.
Daily operating costs. Legal responsibilities. Can you be more specific? Of financial obligations?
Yes, basically, more overselling product.
Okay, so it's like a balance sheet type. Yeah. Okay. Taxes? Oh, yes. we are all unpaid tax collectors. Anything else? Wages, yes. You need to track them. Overtime? Anything else? Okay. All right, so let's talk about, and what we have for financials are lagging indicators. That tells us what's happened, not what's going to happen. And that's where the marketing comes on. Marketing are our leading indicators. They're going to tell us what's going to happen, what next month is going to look like. So, we could look at the number of inquiries, the conversion rate to sales, referral rate. What other measures can you come up with in the marketing area? So again, have a discussion at your table and see if you can come up with other measures that you would see that are important to you in the marketing area. Have you thought of anything?
Gary, you come up with the idea. What was your idea? I'll come back here. I'll come back here on this one.
Okay, I'll ask you when I go around. What's your name?
Mick.
Mick.
Gary.
Nick. Okay, good.
Product knowledge.
Product knowledge. Is that marketing? How would you measure that?
In the turnover of the sales, I guess.
You've
Got the knowledge to sell that's going to in turn come back into sales.
Well, the way I would look at that is, if you saw sales were falling below expectations, that might be one of the factors.
Yeah.
And you say, well, I need to do some more training. Yeah. So the measure is the sales,
That's right.
and then another measure might be you have certain expectations of training. So you expect a certain level of training. As this quarter's training being undertaken,
That's right.
that's a different sort of a
Yes.
measure. Yeah. So, what have you come up with?
Advertising and sign writing, is that coming?
Well, their activities. Well, you might say, well, how much we have a plan for our marketing. We said we were going to do these things in June. Have they been done? So yes, that's the way you can say, has the marketing activity we agreed on in June been undertaken? Got any answers for me?
More brain surgeons.
They cost too much. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's see what people have come up with now. Nick said he was going to give me an answer. And so did Gary.
Just because we're at the front table. Well, I think with marketing, a clever tool to use is modern technology like Facebook and that sort of thing. You can market your business through that.
That's an activity. That's an activity.
Cataloguing.
So, would you, if you're using Facebook, would you, for example, be looking at the number of likes or the number of posts, referrals, those sorts of things? Yeah. So that's the measure. Anything else? Any other suggestions?
Sales by different categories within the business.
But again, that's a lagging indicator. So the marketing is the leading. So you might find, for example, a particular inquiry source is drying up. So you might find inquiries from an ad you were running, basically the ad wasn't doing anything anymore. So that would be something important, wouldn't it? Any other? Sorry?
By asking how people found you?
Yes, that's how you measure it. Yes, so you've got to track that. Really important to track how did you find out about us?
Incentives.
So if you give incentives and you see that they're not working, that's a measure you might have.
Foot traffic.
Foot traffic. Yes. How many people actually enter the store? Is it down this month? Why is it down this month? Any other suggestions?
Trends with those numbers.
Yes. Yeah, so you might look over a quarter. Definitely. So you might get a blip one month and it goes back to normal the next month. It might be some seasonal thing. But if it's a long-term trend that way, it bears further examination. All right, so let's move now to operational. So some of the operational measures might be customer satisfaction. You do customer satisfaction surveys. Staff turnover. If there's a lot of staff turnover, that probably indicates some other underlying problems in the business. And the productivity of the people in the business could be the sales productivity or the installation productivity. What other things can you be looking at in the operational area? So again, just spend a couple of minutes. So any ideas, operational?
Talking about errors that happen in jobs.
Yeah, so number of jobs that are completed in full on time. You know?
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
From what I've seen, it's basically it's that communication between the layers and the shop breaks down. That's usually where the errors
Well, the key part of this is the quote. You quote a job, it involves materials and labour. So at the end of the job, how did the outcome compare with the quote? It's very important. Any ideas? Sorry?
This one's got me, I don't know.
Well, it's an important part of your business. It's a very important part of your business. So, any ideas here? No ideas? Well, that's a problem, isn't it? Any answers here?
The follow-up course?
Yeah. Yeah, how many follow-up calls were done? Yeah. And the results from those follow-up calls. So you might have a simple survey. Yeah. Good. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, so what are some other measures? What are some other measures that we could use for operations? What are other things you could measure? What else could you measure for operations?
I've got the job.
Yes?
Being a non-carpenter person, of course. The quality of the install.
How do you measure the quality?
Observation.
So you give it a score out of 10, like a Big Mac?
It comes under the customer satisfaction.
You know a good job from a not so good job.
So you have measurement criteria, have you? You've properly defined, so you can do a sort of a points check, like, they check, it's like RACV does a car check for you.
Being a carpenter for 40 years, you wouldn't even ask me that question.
But now that's your brain surgery. You've said, I know because of my experience, but if you want other people to be able to leverage that, you have to be able to explain it, to take what's in your mind, what your knowledge is, and have a checklist. These are the 10 things I look for to decide whether this has been a good job or not. It'd be quite helpful for the layers to know that too, wouldn't it? It'd be quite useful. Any other suggestions? We had a suggestion, we're talking about the table over here, which I think was important, and we talked about the quote. You do a quote for a job. At the end of the job, so in the quote, you talk about the number of materials, the amount of materials you use, and the number of hours labour involved. Don't you think it would be a good idea at the end of the job to look at how the end result compared with the quote? Look at the variance. How close was the quote? Were you out? Why were you out? So they're just some examples of operational measures that you can use. Having identified what the measures are, you have to have a way of recording them to create the reports. Now in the financials, your bookkeeping software will produce probably most of the reports you can think of. If you have some marketing software, customer relationship management system, they will produce most of the marketing reports you can think of. The operational ones, you'll have to have a way of putting into place a system to measure that. And one thing about these systems, you have to make sure that these systems are great, they do work, but people have to use them. The information needs to be entered into them, or else the reporting can't happen. So having come up with your gauges, we can then look at the gauges. You have to remember, in each of these gauges, they have different time frames. So like the pilots have different gauges for different stages of the flight. So they have a pre-flight check, and then they have a takeoff, pre-takeoff check, they have a cruise check and pre-land check. And so they have different gauges they look at different times of the journey. So you're going to be looking at things on different things on a daily, weekly and monthly basis and quarterly basis. So there'll be a different set of measures. But what you'll be looking for, so rather than airspeed, you might be looking at sales. So if sales drop, why does it drop? It might be because one of the products is not doing so well anymore. So you need to be able to drill down into sales and be able to tell by product what's happening in each of the product. It might be one of the salespeople is not producing the way they used to. So again, you need to do this by salesperson. You might even do it by days of the week and find out your peak day is no longer your peak day. Why is that? So you need to have the ability to drill down to get more detail. So all we're seeing at the top level gauges is a warning that something's happening, so you need to drill down. So having the gauges, what we've done now, what we've talked about now, we've talked about how you should use your time. We've talked about how you should operate your business and how those operations should be managed. We now come to the secret ingredient of making your business run without you. So how do you do that? What's the secret ingredient of making your business run without you? You. If it's not for you, who's going to create the vision? If you don't do it, who else will? Who else has the passion to drive this? Because you've got more invested in this business than anyone else in your business. You have the most invested in it. Who else is going to come up with a plan and drive the plan? You have to do it. Who else is going to put a value on your time so that you will find the resources and the money to make sure this is all implemented? And who else is going to be responsible for getting the business knowledge to make all this happen? You are responsible. This is leadership. If you don't lead this, none of this will happen. So this is up to you to make this happen. And this can be difficult for business owners because you're the boss. Who can tell you what to do? I mean, it's one thing, you can tell your staff what to do. That's easy. It's very easy to motivate your staff. But who's going to motivate you? So this is where accountability comes in. How do you get accountability as a business owner? Who's going to hold you to account? So I'd just like to use this example from larger businesses. So in a larger business, they have boards, board of directors, and they're the shareholder representatives. They're responsible for putting the vision together, the strategy, and the plan, and they delegate to the CEO, the managing director, to implement that plan. Now, the managing director runs the business for the shareholders. They manage the business by report and report to the board. So how do you replicate this in a small business? You can't afford a board, but you might have a partner. Your partner might be your spouse. But you need to have a formal board meeting where you do these things away from the business so that you work out what you want the person you nominate as the managing director, the CEO, to do on behalf of the board, and knowing that at an agreed time later there would be a report back to that board and hold that accountable. And it's often useful to have a third party involved with that. And I act as an advisor for many businesses, as a non-executive director if you like. So I help owners create policy, create strategy, and then hold them to account that they do deliver on that strategy. So it's important to build that accountability into your business. Find some way of doing that, because if you don't do it, there'll be just days where you don't feel, you lose the energy and lose the drive. So having that accountability for your own actions, you need to find some way of doing that in your business. So this all comes back to your commitment. How much time are you prepared to spend on this? How much money? So let's talk about coming back to valuing your time. Let's put a dollar value on your time. What is the brain surgery of the business? Where can you spend more of your time and get a bigger impact? And if you did more and more of that, what would be the value to your business? How many hours does that take? If you work out these two elements, you can work out the dollar value on your time. So the value on your true value on your time is doing the brain surgery. Now, there is another way of valuing your time, and this is how an entrepreneur would value their time. I say it takes 2 hours a week to make these changes in your business, to create these differences in your business. So let's think about what would be the goal for your business. What is your 12-month goal? And for example, maybe your 12-month goal is to add $100,000 to your business. What would your time be worth to achieve that, 2 hours a week? This is what your time would be worth. Can you afford to get someone to do the grunt work for you? Can you afford to get advice? So how committed are you in making the changes we've just talked about? On a scale of 1 to 10, how serious are you in making the changes in the business? And if it was easy, you would have already done it. And if it's not a 10, Groundhog Day awaits you. I'm sorry. So understanding what we need to do to put in place to make our business run without us, that's fine. But if we don't implement, nothing changes and nothing happens. So let's look at an implementation plan. You need to document your vision. What is your vision? Because without that vision, how can your staff help you to get where you want to go? If you don't know where you're going, your staff certainly won't know. You need to analyse your workflow process and document it. And use it as a training manual for your staff. You need to build a business management system so that your staff follow the operations and you get reports from your business, even when you're on that tropical island. This is how you can spend more time on a tropical island. And you need to implement some sort of personal accountability process, just to make sure you stay on top of it. Now you notice I've got 2 columns here, and the first column is who. Well, you know who, don't you? You're responsible for implementing this. No one else. You may get someone to help you, but you're responsible for making this happen. No one else. And when? When is important because it creates deadlines. We already talked about the importance of deadlines, that we're going to do these things by a certain date. If you don't have a deadline, it's just not going to happen. And this is where the accountability comes in. So you've said to someone who's holding you to account, I'm going to do this by this date. Now, how long might this take to implement fully? It might take as long as 12 months. Faster, of course, if you get some assistance. Now, to help you with this, everyone gets a copy of my book, The 5 Pillars of Guaranteed Business Success. It's a very simple read. And whether, I'm not sure how many here great readers or not, but it won't take you long to read it. It's a very short book. And at the end of each chapter there are exercises that you can follow to help you implement these things. On top of that, I have some additional resources. If you'd like a copy of my Mission Statements Made Easy tool, which will help you with your vision, or a business plan template, I'm happy to provide you a copy of that. And if you'd like a copy, please just fill out this form that's been left on your tables. And if you want me to contact you for any other reason, just let me know as well. But there are two tools you can use to help you implement this. Now, before I finish off, are there any other questions that anyone would like to ask? Yes?
With your experience, what is the biggest barrier to making that initial decision that you've seen?
Basically, well, it's like the Nike slogan. You have to say, I'm just going to do it. But it's always important to make a declaration out loud. Opportunity here today at the conference to stand up and say in front of everyone here, I'm going to do this. And next time we meet next year, I'm going to tell you how I've completed it and the results I've got. So if you're prepared to stand up today and make that commitment in front of everyone, you will do it. Any other questions? I'd just like to leave you...
I have one more question.
Yes.
In terms of the gauges that you set for businesses, you've been around this game for a while. What's like a common number of gauges in a retail type business? Is it 10? Is it 50? Is it 20?
Well, really you only need maybe up to 10 headline gauges, but with the ability to drill down. So if you think about your bookkeeping software, of course, you've got some basic reports you can produce, but all the data is in the system and you can print it out in any way you want. So if you see a drop-off from a particular referral source, you can interrogate the system and find out that that your word of mouth is dropping off. But it's all there if you put it in the database. Any final questions? I just want to leave you with one last thought, and that's the definition of insanity. You do the same thing over and over again and expecting something different to happen. Thank you.